Welcome back. Now, our seniors, we ought to celebrate them. And as with wine, life gets better with age. The Aviation Social Center did it last year, and guess what? They are back at it again. They are doing it in 2024. In commemoration of the International Day of Older Persons 2024, Fifth Sense Strategies and the Aviation Social Center Limited present Seniors Day Out, second edition. The date is Saturday, October the 5th, 2024. The theme, Our Place, that's the short theme. The venue is the Aviation Social Center, and it's between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Activities include free health, self-care, wellness, gentle aerobics, seniors reflexology and massages, outdoor intellectual and fun games, a live band for dance lovers, buffet lunch or buffets, and many more. Tickets are available at the front desk of the Aviation Social Center at 200 Ghana cedis with everything inclusive. This is open to all retirees or pensioners, associations, old school groups, and senior citizens of Ghana that is 60 years and above. So come with your parents, your grannies, your great-grannies, your grandpas, great-grandpas for a good time. This event is brought to you by Fifth Sense Strategies in partnership with the Aviation Social Center, Bracebridge Consult, and the Association of Ghana's Elders. Seniors Day Out is proudly sponsored by GT Bank, SNIT, the VRA, Verna Mineral Water, Dragnet, and Hits 103.9 FM. You can reach out to us via telephone on 0551. Okay, I'll bring you that number later. But let me come back into the studio and have a conversation with Dr. Abu Sakara Foster of the Alliance for Revolutionary Change. So here we are. You've shared your thoughts on MPOX. Let's get into the substantive issue, which has to do with the IPAC gathering and what happened there. So many things happened. I don't even know where to start. But why did you even put this out, this statement of sorts? Just tell us about it.
Well, I think there were at least 3 or 4 reasons. And it was a conditional statement of a status of affairs. Because I felt that if the whole purpose of the IPAC is to simply endorse the EC position and not reconsider the EC position, just because we are able to mobilize some parties to support your position, then it will be a sham. And therefore, you know, we need to do better than that. Secondly, you know, when you say inter-party, what is really the purpose of the IPAC?
But before you go on,
yes,
before you even get into
yes,
the purpose of the IPAC, what makes you think that, and I'm trying to find what you shared
yes,
that day. I want to read certain portions. Yes, here it is. You use some very strong language. You say, IPAC is a sham.
I said,
if only,
yes,
no, I'm reading.
Yes.
IPAC is a sham. If only used to justify the EC's predetermined position. The use of, and you put into quotation marks, rent a party, participants, to blindly support its position without cogent arguments is a disgrace and not a debate. The very composition of IPAC, which effectively mutes the voice of independent candidates in the electoral contest, is questionable. Let me pause there.
Yes.
Why would you say this? Based on what evidence?
First of all, 2 things. If you come defending a position without the intention to redress that position, then what is the point of calling people in the first place? That's number 1. The second part of it is that we all know that certain smaller political parties take up certain positions in consonance with the EC. Why does this happen all the time? And it happens election after election. So we can't have people there who are not making cogent arguments, but who are just there to support the EC position. That's the second part. The third issue, which I mentioned to you, is that if it is inter-party, then it means that independent candidates are excluded in their representation. And what is the purpose of the meeting? It is to look at the procedures, processes, and rules governing the contest of the election. And are the independent candidates not contestants? Did they not pay the same fee as everybody else? Why should they not have representation in those meetings? So it is, first of all, important that the function of the EC is fulfilled to the full, to ensure that there's inclusivity and that there is a real consideration to say that, look, if these errors amount to significant outcomes that could change the result of the election, then they should be redressed.
Hold there.
Yes.
You've mentioned a number of things. I just want to still go back to the point of what makes you think that this setup, at least what was telecast live, was predetermined.
Yeah.
That parties were rented and all of that. I listened to some of the comments and I was taken aback. But I want to find out, you can't just listen to somebody and say, because the person is speaking this way, then they've been paid or they've been rented, so to speak.
First of all, we said there was no cogent argument. When people begin to make an argument against a position, it should not be just, I don't like you and I don't like what you say, and therefore I'm supporting this person. You should come with cogent arguments about my position, are you with me, and why you think that it has no significant impact on the outcome of the election. Not simply to harass somebody else because they have a different opinion and support the EC automatically. And this brings me to another point, which is side issue. We really must take a critical look at who we allow to contest for presidential elections and make sure that certain standards are adhered to. We cannot pride ourselves on having a multi-party election just because we allow anybody to contest for the election. So there should be some real standards to make sure that we do not reduce this to a level where any Tom, Dick, and Harry who has 100,000 can contest.
Okay, so I get that point, and I agree with you. Because I'm sorry to say, maybe I shouldn't be sorry to say it. You listen to some of these people who put themselves forward, and sometimes I sit here with some of them and interview them, and I scratch my head, and this person wants to be president? You know, this, I mean, I'm not denigrating anybody, but some of them come and sit here, and it is clear. It is clear. But that aside, the Constitution has its standards. And if they meet those standards and then they are also able to meet the other requirements as per our electoral laws, they do qualify. Unless you're suggesting that we should change those. Well, then we could have a conversation.
You have a basic modicum of standards, are you with me? But we all know that standards are not the lowest common denominator. You're supposed to aspire to the highest common denominator so that you improve the stock of people who aspire for it. So you cannot just set the base standard and then be working at the base standard. You have to have in place other mechanisms and tools which try to encourage the development of people and also of the institution itself. So I don't subscribe to this idea that a free-for-all means that we have a real democracy. That's not what a democracy is about. Are you with me? So I think that we need to set some standards and also to ensure that we do not populate the election with just any number of people because we want to be called a multi-party democracy. We do not allow just anybody to be participating.
So quality over quantity?
Well, I would say standards. The quality of standards should be upheld.
Okay, but how will these changes be effected? You still not told me how exactly we get there. What would be the roadmap? Let's say let's assume you were president now. What would you do?
I think the first point is that we need to be serious about the standards for contesting for presidential and ensure that people actually have parties and they're not single one-man briefcase parties. And that when we go down to the grassroots, they do have the organizational network. This was the whole basis of the argument for funding for political parties so that they can maintain those structures at the lower levels and begin, grooming the people who will come up through them so that by the time they get up to the top, they meet those higher standards that we're talking about. We don't have that. And at the same time, because we're sticking to this basic standard, anybody who can muster up that money comes up, and they qualify or don't qualify.
And you admit that also applies for the independent presidential candidate?
Every presidential candidate. I don't know why we like to treat the independent candidates as different. That's because
It's not a different treatment. You are calling for equal rights,
yes,
so to speak,
for
across
everybody.
the board. So I just wanted to be sure that
Yes.
you are saying that this should cut across.
It should cut across.
Because you talk about one-man briefcase parties.
Yes.
And some of these independent candidates they
no,
don't
you
have
see,
quite
but
that
even
presence, do they?
the so-called, you know as well as I do, that you can have a party in quotes, which doesn't really qualify as a party.
Right.
Maybe we can be people are a bit lenient and allow it to qualify. But the long and short of it is, independent candidature is a different mechanism of contesting for presidential. It does not require you to have party structures in the formal sense. But that does not mean that you don't need grassroots organizational structures to be able to contest.
Right.
So these are some of the things which we say, look, maybe even 2 years beforehand, all those people who are going to contest for the next election, we should register them 2 years beforehand so that you have time, are you and me, to go down and check to make sure that all these structures exist. And also, you allow them the time to build those structures and be in the game in a real way and not just in a superficial way. Because at the end of the day, you need to be able to make sure that people who are contesting genuinely are contesting for the purpose of enhancing our democracy and not for any other reason.
There is talk on the street, and I've heard so many people talk about it, even people who walk the corridors of power, very prominent people. I have also taken time to notice a few things, and I think to some extent I subscribe to that thinking. Some people say that a lot of these candidates, especially those who go independent, especially for the presidency, not even for the parliamentary, they don't do it because they actually think they will win the election. For them, it is business. Business from different angles. Business from the standpoint of, I am here, I am being sponsored by one of the two big parties. And it is both of them. We hear stories that maybe, Jumanama, other party. This one too is going to do for the other party. To water votes, to cause dissent, to say things that will create problems for the other party. Right? And for some others too, it is for their personal business in the sense of, even travel. Some of them use it to do things. I'm a former presidential candidate, the tag.
VIP. Yeah.
So the talk is that a lot of these people are not doing it because they have the structures, have even maybe the intellectual capacity, or think they can do this, or think they'll ever become president. They're just doing it for business. Yeah. Well, what is your take on it?
I think the first thing is that if you do not have a cause for which you strive, which is of a national interest, then you have no business contesting for presidential candidacy. That does not mean to say people don't have their personal motivations for contesting on top of that. The problem we have is when there is no cause, and it's all personal motivations. I think that is the problem we're talking about and you're describing.
Indeed.
And, it is clear that in a large measure, that is the case because even when people contest consecutively, their votes are reducing. And you're wondering, why is this person still contesting when his votes have more than halved, So at the end of the day, there is no law banning anybody from pitching camp in order to support another party. But in the electoral process, are you with me?
Right.
We should make it clear. If you want an alliance with so, yeah, so be it. But let's make it clear.
Right.
In which case, then you don't come on the ticket. You go, to support this one.
Right.
But those are the things which we should be doing, are you with me, to improve the democratic process so that it is not cluttered with all these, self-interested things that you're describing.
Right.
And we need to get rid of some of those things. Now, the principal issue about the IPAC is that it is set up for a consensus building amongst political parties, which automatically means that the independent candidates do not have their own representatives in there. Now, the question is that they are all contestants in the same race, and the principal business of the Electoral Commission is to ensure free and fair elections. Are you with me?
Right.
So the issue about building consensus among political parties is good, it's nice, etc. But your principal business is to ensure free and fair elections. So how can you be building consensus over there when some of the people who are contesting in an election you are going to supervise are not fully represented there? So I think there's an abnormality, and if your objective is to fulfill the function of ensuring free and fair elections and the rules and regulations to be understood by everybody, etc., and build consensus on that, then you should either change the name of IPAC to say, call it presidential candidates. Are you with me?
Right.
And they all come there and have something else for parliamentary candidates to represent themselves. Then whether you're independent or you belong to a party, you are all represented. So that is an issue that we want to put aside. Now,
so you're talking, you mentioned, for example, that if you look at even the balloting the last time, independent candidates had to be, some of you felt relegated to the background because then they had to finish with the parties before they came to the other candidates.
What is the point?
And the EC did acknowledge that maybe moving forward it would have a different mechanism.
What is the point of balloting? To give everybody an equal and fair chance.
Right.
The laws of probability. But if the laws of probability is that you've reserved some of the places, then automatically I cannot get a position there. Let's assume that those places even have any advantage. Are you with me? So it automatically assumes that those ones at the top have greater advantage than those at the bottom.
Right.
And yet they all pay the same fee. They're all going to contest among the same electorate. So in principle, let them all, just choose for the balloting. And everybody has a fair chance. It should not be that you have 3 independent candidates at the bottom. And by the way, you mentioned the issue about the independent candidates. There are only 3. Are you with me? The smaller parties are much more than the independent candidates. And I'm very keen to see in this election whether the independent candidates will get more votes than some of those smaller political parties.
I see.
And you should interrogate that. Are you with me? So if it so happens that an independent candidate who has not got a party, are you with me, is able to get much more votes than a smaller party, what is the justification then for saying that the independent candidate can only choose a ballot paper after that smaller party?
Let me quickly slot this in. If I take a look at what you've written here, the very composition of IPAC, you say it mutes the voice of independent contestants. Then you talk about the fact that if this requires, like you rightly mentioned, the name of IPAC to be changed to reflect its true function and purpose, then so be it. The EC must not be left with the full luxury of creating contrived, and I'm using your words, contrived institutions and instruments that bolster its position as an unchallenged referee in a match where it is perceived to have vested interests and a weighted hand by virtue of its intransigence to full transparency. I am stating this vis-a-vis IPAC's relevance. Is IPAC living up to expectation? You know how this was set up under Dr. Afari-Jan, and how, the whole bit about let's have that consensus. Though IPAC technically does not deliver an obligatory decision for the EC. The EC will look at it, but at least the political parties get to confer. Is IPAC living up to its expectations?
Before I comment on that, the issue relevant to what I said was whether it is contrived or not. It was created by the EC.
What was created by the EC?
IPAC.
Okay, all right.
It was not that the political parties got together and said, wouldn't it be nice if we have a consultative mechanism? Let's form our...
No, that's why I'm mentioning Dr. Afari-Jan and the whole idea of political parties come on board.
I'm making the point that the EC contrived to form this as a way of creating consensus building among the contestants of the electoral process, so that by the time you get there, there's less rancor. However, it leaves out independent candidates, their own representatives. And this is a point that we have made. Okay. Secondly, whether IPAC is fulfilling its function or not depends on, the power that IPAC has. If we, the contestants, all agree that, look, this starting line is a bit crooked, some people have got 1 foot and some people have lost 1 foot. Please make it straight for all of us. Are you with me? And you say, no, this is my convention. I like, curved lines. Are you with me? Then we have no power, irrespective of what we are saying. And that is where basically we have to decide whether or not a majority vote in IPAC is mandatory on the EC. Now, the problem we have...
Do you think it should be? Do you think it should be that whether in some or all instances, if the majority of the parties there or the candidates there decide that EC, you want to do this, but we don't want this, the EC should
provided
oblige?
Within the regulatory framework within which the EC operates. If it is a convention that the EC has set up and they don't want it, then the EC should change because it is not bound by law in the first place. It's a convention.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
However, if it is something against the law, obviously the EC cannot accede to that. But the point I'm making in between these points is that you should take the majority into consideration, the majority view. Now, the problem we have is when some people there are not necessarily there in order to have a fair contest, but just to support A or B, then you find that they're influencing the majority away from a decision that should be the correct one. The second problem we have is when even those people who are the main protagonists, are you with me, in opposition see that the line is crooked, but in incumbency, they don't see anything wrong with the line. Are you with me? That is also another issue. And that's where we need to be a bit principled to say that no, whether in opposition or in government, we should all start off at the same line.
Okay.
And those are principles that we must adhere to.
Let me get to this point because I listened to quite a chunk, especially the start of the interactions. LPG's, Liberal Party of Ghana's Kofi Akpaloo started speaking. It was a straight attack, a beeline for the NDC. And I think he asked them to speak to the issues before any others speak and whether they have anything else on it. I also found it interesting when Akufo-Addo spoke because I didn't hear the element of what was at stake. What I heard was targeted, you could even call them attacks, insults, and wide support for the EC, like you said, without making any point. But it was just, why are you disturbing this woman? And without making points about, I think because of what I have heard and what has been delivered, I think it is this. That makes me come to something else you put down. You talk about the fact that the political parties, so I'll just try to find that portion. Whilst the NIM, that is the National Interest Movement, fully endorses the NDC's position for an independent external audit of the register, I must stress that this must be adopted as a routine institutional arrangement before every election.
Yes.
So every 4 years.
Yes.
Not 8 years, every 4 years.
Every time you want to use the electoral register.
Do you still stand by the position that we need that external forensic audit at this point?
Yeah, I think that people misinterpret what external means. They probably think that we should go to, London or wherever and go and bring some foreign body here to come and,
audit. It's just something outside the EC.
What we're saying is that you, the referee, cannot be the one who tells us that the line is straight.
Right.
If we all see it is not straight and we're the contestants and we're telling you the line is not straight, are you with me? And you want to say it's straight, then let's bring some other people in. Are you
so this could be electoral VAR.
Indeed.
bring in VAR to confirm.
You see, because the problem we have is that once it's a matter of convention and the EC takes a position and, the decisions of the IPAC are not binding, there's nothing forcing the EC to comply. Now, what we are saying basically is that it's only important because it can have an impact on the election. And that is the part which I think we need to focus on. Because at the end of the day, what are we really talking about here? We're talking about names of people who are not on the right location, at the right polling station. They've been transferred somewhere else. We're talking of names of people who are supposed to have been deceased who are still there, or somebody who is alive whose name has been put on the deceased list, etc. And so many other incidences. Now, you and I know, sitting here, Ben, that our outcome of the election is decided by 50% plus one. Plus one. It didn't say plus 100, plus 1,000,
Well, it's actually
200,000.
more than 50% because 50% plus one
Yes.
is technically, if you look at the percentage, we say it 50% plus one, but it should just be more than 50%. That's it.
Well, no, what I'm saying...
Else it may be negligible in the...
Yes,
but you go.
Yes, you see, but the point here is that the magnitude of the difference between two contestants is reduced to only one vote to decide the outcome of the election. Are you with me? Which means that any issue that can influence the election by more than one vote, are you with me, is consequential.
Right.
So if 100 people or even 10 people were transferred from my polling station to that polling station, and because of the confusion, you couldn't vote, and 10 votes which should have come to you have come to me, are you with me? And I win by one vote or 9 votes, then it means that I'm not the real winner of the election. And if you had got those 10 votes, you would have won.
Right.
Are you with me?
And that is especially consequential in our parliamentary elections, where people have won
just majority,
with
exactly.
3 votes, 5 votes,
exactly.
8 votes.
Exactly. So that is the area that we should focus on. This issue, by how much can it affect the election? And if it is a big amount, and those issues are still in the electoral register, and we cannot agree that they can have a consequence on the election, then we should bring in other people and make it a roundtable discussion where the EC does not have an unchallenged referee position. Do you get my point? So that is basically what we are saying. And I think that it is only fair at this point to say that, look, the EC should simply yield. After all, if you're intransigent about something, it suggests that maybe you have something to hide. I'm not saying that they have something to hide, but I'm saying the very attitude of reluctance. If I've taken something from here and, you said, oh, I want to search your pockets before you go. And I said, no, you can't search my pockets. You begin to suspect that I have that thing in my pocket. Are you with me? But if I pull out my pockets and show you have nothing with me, then you say, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Are you?
But let me ask you this, as we get ready to wind down on this conversation. You talk about fumigating the electoral register.
Indeed.
Fumigation.
Yes.
Of the electoral register. The EC at the IPAC came through that, look, the NDC especially came through with a number of points. It has admitted to 3 issues. We have worked on them. These are the results. If there are any others, we'll work on them. And they also say there's going to be a re-exhibition online, not necessarily another exhibition where you go physically, but you can check your details online. Is that not fumigation enough?
Well, the first point is this. Why did it have to take all this pressure, are you with me, to get those 3 points acceded to? That is point number 1. The second point is that having acceded to those 3 points, does that mean that there are no issues there that can have any consequence on the election? If they are embedded issues, then we should go deeper into it. And that's why I use the word fumigation, because sometimes you can clean the top, but they are actually inside the woodwork. So we need to be able to re-examine the register to make sure that those are not embedded issues. You can have something that occurs as an incident. The frequency is low. And therefore, if you clean it, are you with me? The register is clean. You can also have something that occurs at a slightly higher frequency, but it has a particular pattern, in which case it is embedded, are you with me, in the registration process. And to be able to detect that pattern, you need to look at the whole of the data. You can't decide what a pattern is by looking at just a segment of it. And this is the key issue at hand. If we have found that in constituency A, there have been, transfers of polling stations, people in polling stations from one area to the other, are you with me? That is where we found it. Has it occurred in other places?
Right.
Unless we examine those other places carefully with respect to this, we won't know. And if we do find that it has occurred in places beyond that constituency, it means that the results will not only be affected in that constituency, but it could also be affected nationwide, which means it could have an impact on the presidential as well. So this is where...
So just clarify for me, you're still calling for an external audit?
I am not calling for the external audit simply because we want to call for an external audit.
No, I'm just saying...
I'm calling for an external audit on the principle that we should have it as a routine part of our process, so that at the end of the day, there is no feeling, are you with me, that the referee is also a player. So if you open up and you're transparent about it, then nobody can say anything. Because don't forget, not so far in the distant past, our very EC, who is sitting on seat now, when she was sitting at IEA, are you with me, made a very strong and cogent argument for an external audit of the register. So my question is, what has changed? If it was relevant then, it's still relevant now. And it is not a matter of whether the register is clean or is not clean. It is a question of whether the contestants and their felt need to see that they are satisfied with the level of, what would I say, inspection and interrogation of the register.
We have to go. I just want you to quickly, in less than a minute, deal with these issues for me. Alan has unveiled Kwame Osudanzo as his running mate, a young person. A number of parties are doing that. What led to this decision? A very young man. He's actually someone I know, someone I interact with. And when you look at, you've pointed to a number of things. For example, Jean Mensah, back then, IEA boss versus now. How would you rate her work on a scale of 1 to 10? Both of them in just a minute for me.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't want to, I don't like throwing figures out there.
How would you assess her work briefly?
No, I think that as far as her work at IEA was concerned, I interacted with her for a longer period, and I saw that there was a lot of consistency in the issues that she was
Do you see that consistency now?
Unfortunately, I don't see that consistency now, simply because the same issues she was championing, she's not championing it to the same degree and intensity. Now, there could be some other issues, but for the time being, I would say that she should revert back to her old self, are you with me? And pursue those things to their natural conclusion, because at the end of the day, it doesn't take anything away from you. It only bolsters the reputation that you have already established and your credibility.
All right. And so in other words, the Jean Mensah you knew then and some of what is happening now.
No, I'm saying that some of the issues that are happening now are not consistent with the Jean Mensah I knew. And I want her to return to her old self and ensure that she's consistent and builds her credibility.
We have to go. Let's do Kwame Osudanzo.
That is his choice. And, at the end of the day, he said he wanted a younger person. In response to what the youth were calling for. We had some other younger people that we would have given him as well, are you with me? But that's not the issue for me. The issue really is the level of intensity of the campaign. And visibility of the campaign, are you with me? To achieve the impact that we want as a third force and to be the basis for the emergence of a third force. And my focus now is on ensuring that the parliamentary level, and I told you this a long time ago, that one of the ways in which we can help a third force emerge is by promoting the parliamentary level. So that's my focus now.
You've mentioned that.
Thank you.
Doc, thank you so much. Dr. Abu Sakara Foster is the leader of the National Interest Movement. He is also with the Alliance for Revolutionary Change. He joined us with his thoughts on IPAC, the Electoral Commission, and more. Before we segue into our next conversation, Ghana, get ready for the biggest giveaway from Syntex Tank. Syntex is visiting 15 communities, giving them free water. This is to say, thank you, Ghana, for making us #1. Syntex was the first to introduce double-layer tanks in Ghana, but did you also know that Syntex tanks came in so many colors and were the first to come out with inner white layers? Did you know that? So if it's not Syntex, forget about it. Now, if you're a community and you want to benefit from the Syntex free water giveaway, just log onto their social media handles at Syntex Ghana and nominate your community. The more you nominate, the better the chances of Syntex coming to that community. Remember, it is SINTEX, Syntex tank. No be any tank be tank. The correct tank be Syntex tank. Syntex tank, are you strong? Are you tough? Oh, we have more tough stuff coming your way shortly on the AM show. You want to stay for that.